So pdNorthwest is not exactly a new service. It's more of a new branding here at ESD 113. This is how we're presenting our clock hours that districts can apply for rather than just calling it the ESD. So we've had this around for a while, but haven't really packaged and advertised it to everybody. We want to make sure that all districts know that they can do this. It's a free service and we're happy to provide it. I'm Cindy Joper and I work at ESD 113. My contact information is here. And next to me, you can lean in a little bit, is Nicole Lindsay. And Nicole works in the teaching and learning department, and she and I do a lot of work together on the clock hours. So if you can't get hold of one of us, the other one can help you generally. Sorry, I muted myself somehow. An overview of what I'm going to be covering. I thought I would start off with some terminology just to make sure you know the words I'm saying. A little bit about why we would use pdNorthwest, talk about clock hour permissions and rules for submitting clock hours, do a tour of the website and a demonstration of creating a clock hour proposal, go through the approval process so you see what the flow is for that, talk about record keeping, the MOU I'll explain as we get there, how much clock hours cost, and then take any questions and give you our contact information. So that's the general overview of the day. So terminology. PD Enroller is the software that we use to manage clock hours and classes. And we've been using PD Enroller for about 1.5 years now. We're continuing to use that. Nothing's changing there. pdNorthwest is just sort of our layer on top of that for our districts to be able to do proposals and manage their clock hours. When I talk about a clock hour proposal, that's where you'll submit the information that you need to do to have a class approved for clock hours. And there are a couple of types besides the general clock hours that anybody can get. There's also STEM clock hours and TPEP clock hours. And you can apply for any of those or all of them together. You can have different amounts of STEM or TPEP than the full clock hour proposal. And we'll look at that when we go through creating a proposal. An event is how people go in and interact with these proposals once they're created. It's where people go to register, where you would go to print out sign-in sheets, where we would take attendance. All of that happens at the event level. A catalog is a listing of all of the proposals or all of the events that you have, not the proposals, but the events. So once a proposal turns into an event, that goes into the catalog, and you'll have a catalog specific to your district. The clock hour committee is people, starting with Nicole and me, who approve these clock hours based on the published Washington State approved clock hour requirements, the WACs that are required, that are governing that. So we make sure that anything that we approve meets the WACs. We have said no to things if they don't. We also will send things back and say you need to do something else with it and fix it up before we can approve the clock hours. When I talk about permissions, that's just me putting you into a group that has the ability to create clock hour proposals. So when you want to do that, we'll add permissions for you to do that. So why would you want to use pdNorthwest? Well, for districts, the advantages are that you know that the clock hours are approved and meet the state standards. I think that's a pretty big thing. Any district is actually by default allowed to submit for clock hours of their own or approve clock hours of their own, but there are a lot of rules that go around it, and we can assure you that we follow those rules carefully so anything you offer for clock hours is legitimate. We do the record keeping. There's a requirement to keep records for up to 7 years, well, at least 7 years, not up to 7 years, but at least 7 years after the completion of a class. So we will handle that record keeping for you. You can use the system for registration. So in the past, when we've done clock hour classes for districts, except for a couple that had their own special way of doing it, they didn't really do their registrations through us. They just had people sign up that wanted to get clock hours. But since this is available to everyone, we encourage you to use it for your registration, because then you have a record of everyone who attended your event, whether they purchased clock hours afterward or not. There's no direct cost to the district, so we're not charging districts for this service. The only cost that you might have would be cost to your employees working on it. But we think that this will actually free up a lot of staff time if you're used to doing your own clock hours in-house and doing all of the record keeping yourself, that you may be able to free up some staff time and let us take that over for you. We'll also do some reporting. We can report out different things, especially like the clock hour evaluations. We plan to do those on a quarterly basis for people. For teachers who use this, one of the advantages is this system is nearly statewide. Right now, 7 of the 9 ESDs and OSPI are using it, as well as some of the larger districts. And I think at least one other ESD is about ready to come on board. The other one is dragging their feet a little bit, but we have almost all of the ESDs in the state, and the ones that aren't on are in Eastern Washington. So you can earn your clock hours anywhere in the state and have them stored in one place, which is really handy. I know that a lot of teachers move around from district to district. I know because I keep having to merge their accounts. So this way, when they move to another district, the clock hours they've earned go with them. I know that back when I was earning clock hours as a teacher quite a few years ago, I had them from my district, I had them from the state, I had them from my ESD, I had them from other ESDs, and I had to try to track and manage all of those. And this way they're in one central location. So it makes it a real portable thing. Also, teachers can log in and print proof of clock hours from any single class or a transcript at any time. So that's kind of a handy thing to have available.
It's all official.
And it's all official. Yes, it says official clock hours, official proof of clock hours, and official transcript. So that can be turned into the district office and or to OSPI for certification purposes. So clock hour permissions, when I talk about permissions, it just means that you are able to submit for clock hours. And anyone that the district approves can have permissions to do that. All it involves is letting us know that you want to do that. We add your name to the list, and then from there you're able to do it. So it's a very quick process. We just have to know that you are wanting to do that. Now, whoever's doing it needs to have an account with PD Enroller, and they have to designate the district on their profile. So as long as you have your district listed and you're on PD Enroller, then we can add you in. To request permissions, you can either email me directly, there's my email, or use a contact form on the website. And I'll show you that in just a few minutes when I do a tour of the website. And districts are welcome to have multiple people who propose clock hours. There's no limit to that. It's just whoever the district wants to be able to do it. And I forgot to mention, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box and then we'll answer them at the end. We'll go through all of the questions that we get. So there are some requirements for clock hours, and Nicole, feel free to jump in on this one if I miss anything. The first one is that any proposal for clock hours must be a minimum of 3 hours long. So if it's less than 3 hours, we can't approve it. You'll need to have an agenda that shows lunch and breaks. Lunch doesn't count, so you'll have to subtract out that time. When you're eating, you don't get your clock hours. Breaks don't count against you. So if you have 2 15-minute breaks in a full day, those are just part of your time. Only that lunch has to be separated out. We only do things to the nearest half hour, and we round down. So if you had something that's 3 hours and 45 minutes, you can't get 3 hours, 45 minutes, or 4 hours. You'd have to get 3.5 hours for it. So the nearest half hour, rounded down. You'll need objectives, and those are usually in the format of the participant will blank. They'll learn this or they'll do this. Those are the objectives for the day.
Usually 3.
Usually 3. Sometimes you can have more. Fewer than that, and we'll take a look at it and see if you have anything else. You'll need a qualified instructor, and the way we know that is that all instructors need to have a VITA or resume on file. So I'll show you that as part of the proposal process, that we need to make sure that they have that on file. And I don't know if it's set up to have people renew those every few years. We haven't been on it long enough yet to know that, but we may require after a certain amount of time that people update their resumes. And the goals or the objectives that you're working on should be related to what you're doing in your district. And there's a list, we'll show you where it is in the WACs, but there's a list of things that you can't use this for. You can't do it for routine staff meetings. If you did it for a book study, it could only be for the discussion piece, not the reading time. And there are a number of other things. I know some districts have asked us for using it for their safe schools. Well, safe schools is just a requirement that you have to do on your own and doesn't really qualify for clock hours. We have turned those down. So there's a list. We will show you that. So now I'm going to go into my website tour. And PD Northwest is our website. Let me switch my screen now. One moment. Okay, so now you should be seeing our PD Northwest website. This is fairly new. We just started it probably a few weeks ago. And we don't even know how many people have seen it yet. There are just some different areas on here. The for districts area is help. These are help files for the districts that explain what to do to create clock hours. So if you click on that, and it goes in order. So requesting permission to submit proposals, that's the permissions I talked about earlier. You would just go in here and it explains to go to the contact us form. And that is a form you just fill in and say, I want permission to submit a proposal. Fill in everything there, submit, and then we'll get you set up and contact you back. And then for submitting a proposal, there's a lot more detail. So I was referring a little bit ago to the WACs that are involved. And here are the WACs that talk about things that cannot be used. Routine staff meetings for administrative purposes, professional association business meetings, social hours, independent study, which is probably what we consider safe schools to be as independent study, and actual meal times. Those are not included. Another really important thing to note is that all clock hours must be approved prior to offering the in-service. If we get a proposal after it's been completed, we turn it down. It has to be, the proposal has to be done before the in-service starts. Now there are times it's submitted like a day before and we haven't had time to process it. If we can see it was submitted before the start time, we usually let it through. But be sure that you do it before that, because we can tell exactly when it was submitted. So we'll know whether it was on our end that it didn't get done or yours. And just for informational purposes, it usually can take us 48 to 72 hours to get the processing done. It goes through several stages, which I'll show you in a minute, and different people, and we have to get notified and go in and do it. So it can take a couple of days to get it through the process. If there's something that needs to be done in a real hurry, if you call Nicole, and I'll put her contact up at the end, and say, I've got one that has to be pushed through in a hurry, she'll make sure it gets pushed through and talk to me about it, and so that we get it done. So that is a possibility for emergencies, not for every day. Also on this page, it'll give you the instructions for submitting a proposal, and I will walk through that online, so I won't read through those at all. Also, one of the most important things, and I can't emphasize this too much, I don't think, is having a sign-in sheet and having everybody who attends sign the sign-in sheet. Now, this is another good reason to have everybody register for the class, not just people who want clock hours. You may not have seen this in your district, but people change their mind after the fact. And so sometimes people will come back 2 years later and say, oh, I decided I need clock hours for that class I went to. Well, if we look and they didn't sign in, we can't give them clock hours. And that's a firm rule. We don't go back and say, oh, I know 13 people saw you there and there's your picture. If you're not signed in, we don't have definitive proof. then you don't get clock hours. So make sure everybody at the class signs in, whether they think they ever want clock hours or not. It's better to have the option than to not. We also have a new option, which is using a claim code to sign in, which is sort of an after the fact thing. I don't encourage it much because then people haven't got their name on the printed sign-in form. But if you have to do that because somebody didn't register in advance, the instructions are here. But just make sure that they do sign the sign-in form and that their name is also printed really clearly so we know who they are. I don't usually put in the attendance, but I know that Nicole and Tiffany have, and there are times that there's just no way to read the name to know who to give credit because people scrawl their signature, which is fine as long as we have a printed name. But when they scrawl the name both places, we can't read it and we can't give credit. So it's best if they register in advance. So once you create an event and create a clock hour proposal that's approved, we will create an event for you and send you a packet of information, well, electronically, that tells you what to do. And if it's a multi-day event, we'll send you a spreadsheet to fill in. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along. But you'll get that from Tiffany, who's our sort of front office clock hour person. She's the one that makes contact with the districts about the proposals. Managing the event, once again, talks about the sign-in sheet. I'm really firm on the sign-in sheet. And then what to do with it, where to email it once you're done, and how to email the attendance sheet. So that's the information for districts. We also have information for participants, and I'm not going to go in depth on that right now. It's here, so if there's somebody who has trouble, these are help files for that. Walks people through the whole process, how to print their clock hour form, how to print their transcript, registering for the class. All of that is here for participants. That's just a little outside the scope of what I wanted to talk about today. Now the course catalog, every district is listed here. Every district that we have, plus a couple of our privates that we know have offered clock hours through us before. So if you want to see your course catalog, you would just click on it. So for instance, Raymond has some clock hours here through PD Northwest. When I click there, they can see it. They can go in here and register for it. So all you have to do is have your people go here, click on it, and they can get registered for the classes. Or you can also grab the link here and put it on your website to make it easy for people to get to the catalog. Back. And then the last piece of this one is the contact form, as I showed you a little bit ago. But besides submitting a proposal, there are other things that if people have questions, they can send them in here. If none of my categories work for you, there's other. And we'll get back to you usually within the same day, unless we're gone somewhere. But generally, we're very quick on that. So we'll get an answer to you right away. Now I'm going to move to PD Enroller, which, as I said before, is sort of the back end of things where we put everything. That's the engine that drives this. And I've created an account here, not my usual account, but that allows me to be a clock hour proposer to PD Northwest. So I'm going to do a quick walkthrough of proposing clock hours through this system. So once you're logged in, if you've got clock hour permissions, you'll see the clock hours drop down. Go to clock hour proposals, and there's a button for a new proposal. Now you're going to choose your committee. Since there's only one committee, you have one choice. It's the PD Northwest Clock Hour Committee. And you can create a new proposal, or if you had one you did before, you can duplicate it with the repeat past proposal. You just have to know the number. But that's really a handy tool because there's a lot of typing to do. So if you can just repeat what was there before and then tweak it a little bit to fit the next one, that will save some time. But I'm going to create a new one. And when I get in here, the first required thing is a title. So I'll give it a title. I'm just going to use my first proposal. And you can also put in a subtitle. Now, sometimes people will put in for people in blank school district only, just so that anybody else who happens across it knows that this is only for people within their district. But I'm not going to do that for right now. I'm just going to save and continue. And it takes me to a form. And this form has tabs across the top. You can do these items in any order. You just have to do all of the required parts. Like any form, or like many forms at least, if there's an asterisk, that's a required field. So you have to have a title. You don't have to have a subtitle. You have to have an event description. You also may document your need, and if you look at the wax of things that are available for clock hours, there are some ideas there that you could use for why you need this. It's not a required one, and we don't push people on that one, so that's up to you. Going to a new tab will save everything. I'm a paranoid kind of person when using a website, so I'd like to click the Save tab just to be sure. But just going to a new tab will save. Here we put in our hours and objectives. So the number of hours that you're requesting, it has to be at least 3. Could be more. It can be, I've had, we've had proposals up to like 60 hours or something like that are ongoing PLC sorts of things, or classes that last all year long during late starts, things like that. And they'll have some kickoff at the beginning and a full day or 2 at the end and a bunch of things in between. So we can have quite a few. Attendance hours are handy for people who don't actually want clock hours but want a record of having been there. So generally I recommend just putting in the same number of attendance hours as clock hours, because it doesn't hurt anything, and then people can get those attendance hours to prove they were there. Still, good idea to sign in on the sign-in sheet in case they're wanting to change it to clock hours later. You're going to enter the objectives here. 3 or more are preferred. So you would go to Edit Objectives, add them in. I'm just going to do 1, 2, and 3 here because I don't want to waste time typing. If you want more, you just add objective and then you put in another one. When you have all of your objectives written, you save that and go down the page. Now, I mentioned earlier that you can do STEM hours and TPEP hours. And these are new this year and have new requirements. And I honestly have to say I don't know all the requirements yet. But we have a person who is qualified to approve STEM clock hours. Someone who knows the science and math requirements well enough that he can go through and decide whether they're approved. If you're going to do STEM clock hours, they don't have to be the same number of hours as the other part of the proposal. So you put in number of hours that you're requesting, and then you choose which. You have to have at least 2 of the 4 STEM elements. So let's say at science and engineering, as soon as you do that, then you get these boxes to show up. They don't show up until you've chosen at least 2. You have to answer all of these guiding questions with a yes in order to qualify and give details. What is the impact of this? So for right now, I'm going to undo that so I can finish up my proposal. TPEP allows you to choose which criterion, and we have both teacher and principal evaluation criteria. Again, it can have a different number of clock hours from the total clock hours for the event. So choose how many hours relate to TPEP. And then the important thing is that if you choose TPEP and check any criteria, you need to put a rationale at the bottom. So what is the rationale for that? I didn't propose any of those, so I can go on to the next page. And the date and location. Whatever district you have chosen on your profile will show up at the top when it asks you about locations. So I put Raymond on mine because that's the last place I was a teacher. So that seemed like a good one to choose. And so I would have the choice of Raymond location, online only. If that doesn't work, I can do other and fill in the information. If I choose Raymond, I can still edit it here. because it says Raymond Region, I might say Raymond High School. Put in the address where I'm going to hold it and go on from there. Again, I could save or I can just go to the next one.
Date and location.
And Nicole just reminded me, this is the part, I did that on purpose. No, I didn't do that on purpose. But this is something I do all the time, so you may need to go back and do this yourself. After you've chosen the location, down the bottom of the page in sort of subtle little green buttons are the sessions. And so you add an on-site session by clicking the first one, choosing the date and the time, beginning and ending times, and where you're going to hold it. If you have another session, you click Add Online On-Site Session again. Online classes are a little bit trickier to get approved because there are some more requirements. I suggest if you have an online session you want to do that you call Nicole and talk to her, and she can help you through that.
And I want to make note on the sessions. I've noticed a couple times that people, when they open that up, and if you would open that back up, if they have an event that, excuse me, lasts, say, 3 or 4 dates, they put the start date and then they put the end date as the last date. That's not going to work for us. We will need each individual date. So you'll need the first date, the second date, the third date, the fourth date. That way we can see that it is 6 hours each time, that information. So just to make note.
Yeah, because otherwise it looks like you're having a really long slumber party. That doesn't work. Okay, now if I go on to the agenda, you can either put your agenda in the box or upload an agenda. And when you make your agenda, we need times on it. That's probably the most common thing I see Nicole send things back for. It's like, I don't see the times. I need to see the starting time, the ending time. Or you can have this activity lasts 45 minutes, this activity lasts an hour, and we can add up the times that way. But one way or another, you need to indicate time with the agenda. If not, it gets sent back. And if the time doesn't add up correctly, it gets sent back. So to save yourself having to redo it, check on your agenda, make sure the times match up and that they're there. But you can upload an agenda. So if you've created one you're going to hand out to people, don't redo it and type it in here. Just upload it to us, and that will work as well. And I'm just going to put 3, so that there's something in here so I can get to the end. Now, presenters, when you go to add a presenter, you can look for presenters who have done this before. I'm going to try Nicole, but no, I'm not going to try Nicole. I'm going to add somebody else. Deselect Nicole. I'm going to add my grandson, who's never going to do this, so he should be safe to do. What? I've had him in there before. Never mind him. Well, you would select the presenter, and we'll just select Zach. And you'll see that there's missing information from him because he's a college student. So I don't have his phone number. I don't have his resume or experience. You need to have email, phone number, either filled in experience or better, upload a resume or Vita. And then we keep that on file. So I would have to add some experience for him and a phone number for him. And then he could be the presenter. Oops. And then I, by mistake, hit add presenter again. I only need that one, so I'm good. And where's this? There's no save button on that one?
Save his name. Save.
There I go. Yeah. Save Zachary.
There you go.
Okay, thank you. And then contacts, for reasons unbeknownst to me, it asks for what administrator is requesting this clock hour proposal, as well as the person who's doing the work. It can be the same person, but for some reason you need to fill in both. So you would choose those and fill in. Now your name fills in automatically, but it may not fill your administrator in. So you may have to fill that in. So let me make Nicole my administrator. She's always wanted to be in charge of me. Okay, so now that I've got an administrator, I can save that and go to the next one. Now the next one is preview. That means you've gotten through everything you need to do. Hooray. And this will show you a preview of what you've put in, who the presenter is, the objectives, the dates, the location. Be sure you read through all of that carefully and make sure this is what you want to say. Then at the bottom of the screen, it'll have a validation checklist. Now, I don't have anything here in red. I should have done something wrong. Mm-hmm. Normally, if you left off something, there'll be a red exclamation point and a description of the error, which is a clickable link. You would click that, it would take you back to your proposal to fix whatever was wrong. So it's very clear. And then the submit for approval button is not active if there's anything here with a red exclamation point. Once it's all ready, you would hit submit for approval. It goes off to us and we take it from there. So I'm going to go through that process next. That's creating a clock hour proposal in PD Enroller. I'm going to show you to the properties page because it gives you a little bit of information that you don't have otherwise. So it'll show you that first it's going to go to the PD Northwest final clock hour committee, and it's not approved there yet. And then it goes to the final committee. So if you want to just check on the status, you can go into your proposal and click on properties and it will show you. It shows you when you created it, whether it's a repeat, who your organization is. And if this is in your drafts and you decide you're never going to submit it and it's bugging you that it's sitting there in your drafts, by going to properties, you can hit this remove button and get rid of it. So people are often asking us how to get rid of proposals from their drafts. So that's the way you would do that. I'm going to switch back to my PowerPoint now. And share that. Okay. So I talked about the approval process. This graphic shows how this works. Now I've color coded this. So green are the district things that are doing. The blue is what the ESD is doing, and the purple is what the people who are taking the class do. So you'll see there's a lot less green than anything else. That means it's not very heavy on the districts to do the work. You start off by doing that submission of a proposal, and then you sit back and wait while we do the committee reviews, including STEM if it has STEM in it, and the final committee review. Then we're going to send an approval and the packet that will come from Tiffany that tells you what your event number is, how to get to it on your catalog, what your requirements are. So Tiffany will send out a whole packet of that. Then you just give people the link or tell them how to get there and they register for the class. Once they get to the class, they attend and they sign in. If anyone leaves early, you should make a note on the sign-in sheet of how many hours they were actually there, because we need actual hours of attendance. Then once it's completed, you'll send us that sign-in sheet on email, so just scan it in and send it to us. We'll take that and we'll mark attendance in the system. Once we mark the attendance, attendees will receive their email that says, thanks for attending, please do this evaluation. Evaluations are a required piece of doing clock hours. So they'll be asked to do an evaluation. Once they complete the evaluation, they get another email that says you've done that, now you can pay for your clock hours. Once they pay for their clock hours, then they're done. They can print out their transcript or their proof of clock hours. So that's that process in a nutshell. As far as record keeping goes, we keep all the records for no less than 7 years per WAC. And anyone, we can get to those at any time. We can get to them, the participants can get to them within some limits. I think the districts can get to some of the records, but I'm not sure. I'd have to check on that. But teachers can log in at any time to print their transcript or their proof of clock hours. Now, for those who are superintendents who've been in communication with Andrew Ayers in the last week, you'll know that he's preparing to send out an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. So this is really a formality because it's nothing new that we're allowing districts to do. We've always allowed districts to submit clock hours through us. We've just sort of formalized it and packaged it. So what we do on this MOU is we handle your approvals and make sure that they meet all of the WACs. We retain the clock hours. We give you a platform for registration. We record the attendance. We have official transcripts. We'll do an annual needs assessment for the district, quarterly reports, evaluation summaries, technical assistance as needed. Fortunately, this system is really pretty smooth and we don't have to do a whole lot of technical assistance, but it is on a computer. It is connected to the internet, so technical assistance is, going to happen. And we'll also give you your own district catalog of events. Now, from the district's perspective, what you need to do is just decide who can have permission to create clock hour events, follow all the rules of clock hour events, which are posted on the website, ensure that all in-district clock hours are made available to the staff through PD Northwest. So if you're doing any kind of clock hours, do it through us. It's free to you, gives them an opportunity to put their clock hours in. Make sure that all the district staff know the availability of PD Northwest. And once in a while, we have meetings of a clock hour committee 3 or 4 times a year, and we need people to come in and do the oversight for us. So we follow the rules of the WACs, we do all this, but we need a committee that says, yes, those are approvable clock hours, you're doing this correctly. So we will ask districts, at least one per county, to send us somebody for the clock hour committee. It's not a heavy lift, but we would really appreciate if people would help out with that. Now, I've talked about this being free for districts. The way that things are paid for is that the participants buy clock hours. This is the same as what they would do if they were coming to ESD for a clock hour class. They would pay the same amount. There's no difference. There's a $5 registration fee, and this year, for the first time, it's gone up to $3 per clock hour. It's been $2 for about 20 years. So the cost of a 3-hour class would be $14, $5 plus 3 times 3. After 90 days, if people haven't purchased their clock hours within 90 days, there's a 20% late fee. So we really encourage people to do it within 90 days. Part of that is that we only do evaluations for the first 90 days because they're not very valid after that. And we want that evaluation information. We want to be able to send that back to the districts and say, here's how your classes are going. So we want people to pay right away. Also, sometimes people wait and then they have to get them all when it's time for their certificate to be up or when they need a raise. And they're buying, 50 to 100 clock hours at a time. It gets pretty expensive to hit your budget all at once like that. So it's better to do them as you go along. And I don't think that we've had any questions come in on chat. So if you do have questions, here are the people that you can contact, and we're happy to answer any questions. I'll go through this list just quickly. Andrew Ayers is the Assistant Superintendent for Teaching and Learning. He can answer administrative questions and contract questions. I'm Cindy Joper, and I handle assigning permissions, tech support questions, and then I back up Tiffany and Nicole with other questions about the system. Nicole can talk to you about status of your proposal, setting up events, anything that you need to know around that. And then Tiffany Harmon, who's our receptionist at the front desk, does the record keeping, sign-in sheets, and spreadsheets for multi-day events, and will send you the packet. But we all work together. We all can do things for each other. Okay, Andrew's mostly just administrative, but the rest of the stuff, Nicole, Tiffany, and I can kind of pass off between each other. So if you can't get a hold of one of us, try another one. But be sure to call any of us anytime. I want to thank you for taking time to view this and let us know if you have any questions. Bye.